Well, hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing well this weekend. Grateful for this opportunity to be together, to open the scriptures as we wrap up this three-part series called Leaning In. And this is a series about how God desires to expand the hearts of his people to more fully reflect his heart for all people. And I just want to share for a moment just some reflection on what's going on in Wisconsin and just the racial tension and the racial violence that we continue to experience in our country throughout this summer. And, it breaks my heart that this is what we're experiencing in our country. And I just recognize how much we need the message of Christ, how much we need the heart of God, his big heart for all people. And so I just think that we really need this message right now, and our country so needs Jesus. And so with that in mind, let's jump into part 3 of Leaning In. And I just want to begin with this. Do you remember normal? Do you remember back to February of this year? Let me jog your memory here. Image of friends eating at a restaurant. And, eating close, it's loud, the restaurant is full. They might even be sharing from the same appetizer plate. It's like, that was then. That's not what's going on now. I know that many of you went back to school last week. Many more are going back to school in the coming week. And so just a picture of a classroom here, recognizing that that's probably not what your classroom is going to look like this year, because we got the masks and social distancing and hybrid and virtual. And some of you guys are trying on homeschool for the first time. It's just very different than it was back then. And just one more image. I'm not sure if we're emotionally ready for this, but college football and everybody packed into the stadium. And we don't get to have college football or high school football this fall. It's kind of like normal went out the window in March when this virus hit and all the restrictions that we're trying to live under. And the deal is, in the story today from the scriptures, the book of Acts, we're going to be looking at a group of people for whom normal went out the window. And it was the very first Jesus followers. They were here in Jerusalem. That's where the whole thing started. And things were going really well for them in Jerusalem. They were meeting together daily in the temple courts for worship and teaching. They were gathering in each other's homes, sharing meals and sharing life. And a lot of people were joining the Jesus community in those days. I mean, 5,000 people were now a part of it, and more were joining every day. Things were going really, really well for the first Jesus followers in Jerusalem. That is until a guy went on a rampage. A guy by the name of Saul, a Pharisee, he made it his business to stamp out the Jesus movement. And so he was going door to door, dragging Jesus followers off to jail. He traveled 100 miles north to a city called Damascus just to chase down some of the Jesus followers. And the rumor was that he had an encounter with Jesus that changed his life. And he had headed home back to where he came from, a place called Tarsus in modern day Turkey. But that was the rumor. But what was definitely true was that the persecution that he launched was picking up steam. And so the early Jesus followers were forced to flee from Jerusalem to get away from this persecution. And the thing is, God was going to use these fleeing followers. And he was going to do something incredible in and through them. He was expanding their hearts. His desire was that their hearts would more fully reflect his. And so God was going to do something incredible. And as we will see, it's going to take place here, about 300 miles north of Jerusalem, in a city called Antioch. And so for the first Jesus followers, normal had gone out the window. And for us, normal went out the window in February, March. And something I just believe is that God was up to something big in the lives of his first followers. And I believe that God is up to something in us as well. In fact, I believe that this could be the most vibrant season of ministry that Ada Bible Church has ever experienced. I mean, even in the midst of the changes and the disorientation and just disruptions that we're experiencing, I believe that this season could be an incredible time of spiritual movement in your life and in the lives of people around you. I believe that God could use this time to expand our hearts to more fully reflect His. And so I believe that this could be an incredible time of spiritual growth for us if we make the right choices, if we choose the right things. You see, what we're going to be looking at today is the first Jesus followers. They made 4 choices that led to some incredible spiritual movements. And these are 4 choices that we need to make as well. And so let's jump into the story. We're in Acts chapter 11. Luke, who gave us the book of Acts, he begins the story this way. Now, those who had been scattered by the persecution, this persecution hits and they just flee. It's like in all directions. The persecution that broke out when Stephen was killed. Understand, Stephen's death, Saul was responsible for that. And so these first Jesus followers, they traveled as far as Phoenicia and Cyprus, which is an island in the Mediterranean, and Antioch, the city that we already mentioned. And what are they doing as they go? They're spreading the word only among the Jews. They're spreading the message, but only among Jewish people. But the story goes on. Luke tells us that some of those fleeing from Jerusalem, men from Cyprus and Cyrene, that's northern Africa, they went to Antioch. And they began to speak to the Greeks also, not just the Jewish people, but also to the Greeks, telling them the good news about the Lord Jesus Christ. You see, here's the deal. Jesus had given his disciples, given his followers a mission. And we used this image earlier in the series to show the movement of that mission. He said, hey, you're going to be my witnesses. You're going to represent my message here in Jerusalem, and then in Judea, the surrounding countryside, then Samaria, a nearby region, and then to the ends of the earth. And I think originally, the Jewish followers of Jesus, because Jesus was Jewish, all of his disciples were Jewish, almost everybody in Jerusalem was Jewish. I think they sort of assumed, okay, we're going to bring the message of Jesus to Jewish people in Judea, in Samaria, and the ends of the earth. But then something happened, and we saw this last week, where there was this interaction between Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, and then Cornelius, a Roman, that's a non-Jewish guy, a Roman soldier, where Cornelius placed his faith in Christ, received the Holy Spirit, and it's like evidence, very clear evidence that, whoa, this message is for them. It's not just for us Jews, but also for the non-Jewish world. And so some of those scattering from Jerusalem, they made a deliberate decision not to go home, not to go back to their roots, but to go to a big city called Antioch, like 3rd or 4th largest city in the Roman world, big multi-ethnic trading hub kind of city, and they're bringing the message of Jesus to Greek people there. They're taking it outward. And so what's going on here? Well, it's the first choice that the first followers made, the choice that I think we need to make, and it's right here. Choose the mission. Choose the mission. Jesus gave them a mission, and somehow, incredibly, even as they're being scattered, they choose to stay on mission. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, when my life turns upside down, when I'm experiencing upheaval, the first thought that pops into my head is not necessarily, hey, remember, you're on a mission. You know, I know I'm the pastor and maybe I should be thinking that, but can we just be real? That's probably not going to be our automatic response. And that's why it's a choice. We have to choose the mission. We have to remember what God is doing in the world, that God wants a relationship with all people, and he's inviting us into this mission. And so what would it look like for us to step into this, to participate in this with him? And you might be thinking, well, that sounds great, but also incredibly intimidating. I mean, how do I engage people in conversations about Jesus and who he is and how he gave his life for them. That sounds intimidating. Well, perhaps this will help. Luke tells us the Lord's hand was with them. As they scattered, as they traveled, as they engaged people in conversation, the Lord's hand was with them. And a great number of people believed and turned to the Lord. It was true for them. And what if it's also true for us? I mean, when we choose to step into this mission, what if God is at work in and through us? What if he's with us? What if he'll provide opportunities? What if he'll give us words to say? What if he's already at work in your school? What if he's already at work in your office, at your job site? What if he's already at work in your neighborhood and in your family? What if you're not alone when you step into the mission that Jesus is calling you to? As they scatter, and as we experience a very disorienting time, what does it look like to step into that mission? And maybe you're thinking, okay, it makes sense. I understand God's going to be with me, but what do I do? How does this actually play out? Well, as the story unfolds, I think we're going to see at least one clear example of what it looks like to step into that mission. And so in Antioch, some fleeing Jesus followers, they begin to spread the message, and some of these Greek people are beginning to believe. And so you have new Jesus followers and a community forming around Jesus. And word gets back to Jerusalem, to the church leaders there. And understand, this is an unusual deal because this is the first multi-ethnic, non-Jewish and Jewish Jesus community. And the church in Jerusalem is going, we need to check this out. We need to understand what's going on here. And so here's what happens. News of this reached the church in Jerusalem, and they sent Barnabas to Antioch. Now, I think this was a wise choice because Barnabas, he's ethnically Jewish, but he grew up in Cyprus. And so he's like culturally bilingual. He can relate well with Greek-speaking people, Romans, pagans, and he can also relate well with Jewish people. And so they send him to Antioch. Now, something that's important about this is not the first time that we meet Barnabas in the book of Acts. Luke introduces us to him in Acts chapter 4 in this little section where he's describing what community was like in the early church in Jerusalem. And if you read the section, it's pretty incredible because Jesus followers are actually selling off their property in order to help those who are in need. They're being incredibly generous with their possessions, and Barnabas is one of those. So check this out from Acts chapter 4. Now Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, whom the apostles called Barnabas. Okay, so his name's not even Barnabas, it's actually Joseph. Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. It's like they're watching this guy and the way that he interacts with people, the way that he speaks, and what he does, and it's like, that guy, that's Mr. Encouragement. And so they give him a nickname, and for the rest of the story, he's known as Barnabas. And so here's what he did. He sold a field that he owned, and he brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. And so from the first moment that we meet him, Barnabas isn't about Barnabas. Barnabas is about investing in his spiritual family. He's about sacrificially serving others. And so what do you expect the son of encouragement to do when he shows up in Antioch? Well, it's probably pretty obvious. Here we go. When he arrived and saw what the grace of God had done, again, God is already at work. He is with them. He was glad. And he encouraged, there it is, the son of encouragement, encouraged. What a shock. He encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their heart. Now, I think this is important. He's not just saying nice things to them. This is not just when you signed somebody's yearbook in high school, never change, you're the best. No, he's encouraging them with a purpose, that they would remain true to the Lord, that they would be faithful in the way that they live their lives to the person and the teaching of Jesus. It's a very intentional encouragement. And this word, I think, is critical to understanding what it means to participate in the mission of what God is doing in the world, to make disciples, to make more followers among all peoples. Because this word, it's this idea of coming alongside somebody and journeying with them and teaching them and instructing them. It's like mentoring. And the word I'd like to use here is a choice to invest. You see, Barnabas, in the midst of everything that was going on in the early church and the upheaval and the persecution and how they're spreading out, he chooses to invest in a group of non-Jewish people that are not like him who have come to faith. He chooses to invest in them. He comes alongside with them. He journeys with them and he teaches them. He's mentoring them in the faith. Now, this idea, this concept, I think some of us know exactly what this feels like because we've been on the receiving end of somebody investing in us spiritually. I mean, maybe you had a small group leader or maybe a youth pastor that just walked alongside you and taught you and mentored you in what it looks like to follow Jesus. Maybe you had a coach. Maybe you had a teacher who invested in you in this way. Maybe like me, when you were in high school, your parents took on that role. I mean, for me, my dad came alongside my life in high school and invested in me and in a way that just powerfully impacted my faith. So some of us know exactly what this feels like. And I just believe that investing in others with a spiritual emphasis, I think this is foundational to any healthy and growing church, including ours, which is why we make it such an important part of what we do here at Ada Bible Church. I mean, the idea of small groups, we talk about small groups all the time. What is a small group? It's a group of people that journey together for a season of life with the purpose of encouraging each other to be faithful to Jesus, investing in each other. I mean, this is a huge part of our church. And so it's this decision, this choice to invest in others. Now, here's the question. Who are you investing in? Who are you walking with and investing in their spiritual well-being? And maybe, speaking of small groups, maybe it's time for you to join a small group. I mean, this is critical for spiritual growth. We really believe in this idea. And so just to let you know, hey, we're launching small groups next month. An event called Group Launch. You can attend in person, you can attend virtually, but we're forming new small groups. And this could be an incredible season of spiritual movement in your life and in the lives of people around you. But you got to choose to invest. And maybe this is a way for you to invest. You know, I spent a lot of time in our student ministry here at Ada Bible Church. I had the privilege of leading Lifeline for a season. And to watch older adults or younger adults come alongside a group of middle school students or high school students and just invest in them for a season, it's hard to put into words the impact of that investment during that critical stage of life. And so when I ask, who are you investing in? I think some of us need to step into this leadership opportunity of investing in the next generation, whether that's students, whether that's kids in our children's ministry, whether that's young adults in Union, our young adult ministry. But who are you investing in? And maybe you have a marriage that's strong or strong-ish. You know, you're doing pretty well. What would it look like to invite some younger couples into your home to share a couple meals over the course of a couple months, just to invest in them, to mentor in them spiritually? Who are you investing in? This idea of investing in others is so critical. This could be a season of incredible spiritual movement in your life and in the lives of people around you. But it's going to come down to some choices. And one of those choices, an important one, is a choice to invest. So here's Barnabas. He shows up in Antioch. He's investing in the lives of these new believers, this brand new multi-ethnic Jesus community in Antioch. And it's going pretty well. A couple different places in this story, we get this phrase, great numbers of people. Great numbers of people were coming to faith. Great numbers of people were being encouraged. I think there's quite a crowd that's growing. And so I think Barnabas is going, this is great, so glad to be a part of this. I could really use some help. I need some backup. And so who could I bring into this? Who could I pull in? Who could I include that can help me out? I need somebody that's kind of like me, that's culturally bilingual. They can relate to Greek people and Jewish people. I need somebody that really knows the scripture so they can teach them as we attempt to invest in these people. Who could I pull into this? And he's brainstorming, thinking through people, and it's like, he has an idea. No, not him. Check this out. Then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. Saul, the guy who was responsible for the death of Stephen. Saul, the guy who set into motion this movement of persecution that had driven the Jesus followers out of Jerusalem. He goes to look for him, because he had an encounter with Jesus that transformed his life. And Saul was culturally bilingual, and Saul really knew his scriptures. And so he went to look for him, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. I gotta imagine this ruffled some feathers. You brought who? What? But here's what happens. So for a whole year, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught, there's the phrase again, great numbers of people. And the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. I think this ministry of investing in others just has incredible impact, so much so that they get a new nickname, the Christ people. I think the people of Antioch are watching this Jesus community and they're recognizing something in their character and in their interactions and how they treat the people around them. Those are the people that are like Jesus. Those are the Christ people. So Barnabas, he needs help. He goes to get Saul. He brings Saul back. Saul partners with him. I mean, why does this matter? Well, just understand this partnership of Barnabas and Saul. God is going to use these two guys in an incredible way, particularly Saul. And God's going to use him to bring the message of Jesus all over the Mediterranean world. It's like Barnabas's ministry, his investment, it grows exponentially because he includes Saul. See, a third choice I think is so important for the early Jesus followers and also for us is right here. Choose to include. Barnabas chooses to include Saul, and his effectiveness grows exponentially. And I think this is so important for us because here's the deal. Often, our impact is not determined by what we do, it's determined by who we include. I'll say that again. Often, our impact is not determined by what we do, but by who we include. It's not so much what you do, it's who you include that contributes to your greatest impact. And Barnabas' impact grew exponentially through Saul. And I think this is so true for us as well. So just question to wrestle with is who are you including? Who are you including? Those of you who serve as leaders in Discovery Village, our children's ministry, or Lifeline, you ever had those moments where you're leading students or kids and you just go, man, she would be so good at this. Or he would be, man, he would really enjoy this. He'd be really great at this. Include them. Invite them. Because it's not so much what you do, but who you include that determines your impact. And I know that a whole bunch of you who are serving in our in-person services before this whole thing went down, you've pivoted outside of the church. As our services in person shut down for the summer, instead of just going, I guess we'll wait, you found places to serve out in the community. Downtown, different local ministries that are doing great work. And first off, can I just say, that is awesome. And thanks so much for doing that. And secondly, who are you going to include? As you're serving at at the Pregnancy Resource Center, or you're serving downtown, who comes to mind? Man, I should invite them. They would be great at this. They would love this. Who are you going to include? I think this is so important. And think also about just the impact that this has on the person that you're including. I mean, think back earlier in my life when I was in high school. I was part of a church youth group, and my youth pastor, he included me. And he gave me opportunities to lead worship. Was I an amazing musician? No. And he gave me opportunities to teach my fellow students. And I'm telling you, that inclusion, those opportunities, they did something in my heart, and God used that. Often, it's not what we do, but who we include that determines our impact. And so who do you need to include in this season? And so we have Barnabas and Saul investing in the community here in Antioch. And their work just leads to something I think is so important and so beautiful. And I want you to see how it plays out. And Luke tells us about this just a couple chapters later, chapter 13 in the book of Acts. It goes like this. It's one back from that. Now, in the church at Antioch, there were prophets and teachers. And he's about to describe their leadership team, I think. And so here's how it goes. Barnabas, now we know who Barnabas is. He's from Cyprus, you know. And then we have another guy named Simeon, called Niger, and you might recognize that. Niger is a country in Africa. I think this guy is a black African guy. You have Lucius of Cyrene. Cyrene is in northern Africa. You have Manaen, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, so that's Israel. Herod was a king appointed by the Romans, and so this guy, he was like the foster brother of a king. He grew up in luxury. He grew up in the Roman system. And then you have Saul, who was a Pharisee, who was a murderer, who was a persecutor, and he's also from Tarsus in modern-day Turkey. And so you got Europe, Africa, Asia. You have different ethnic groups, different colors. You have totally different socioeconomic backgrounds. And this is the leadership team of the church in Antioch. It's incredibly diverse. And I look at this and I think about the mission that Jesus gave his disciples. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth, and make disciples, followers among all nations, all people groups, all ethnic groups. And I look at this and I'm like, that's it. It's like mission accomplished, guys. And I think of the image that we get in the book of Revelation of what heaven is like, and this great crowd, every tribe, every nation, every tongue, and it's like, that looks like that. And I just see that as they chose the mission, and as they chose to invest, and as they chose to include, especially people that were different, you get this beautiful picture. And it just seems like these choices have the ability to unlock something, that God would cultivate the kind of community where everybody's welcome, where everybody has a role, everybody has the opportunity to participate and lead, regardless of their race, regardless of their personal history, Saul, regardless of their socioeconomic backgrounds. This is a beautiful picture of what the church is supposed to be, the kind of church I long to be. And so it's like mission accomplished in the church in Antioch, until God breaks up the band. Check this out, very next verse. While they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul, hey, your pastor and co-pastor, set them aside for the work to which I have called them. He's taking them out of their role of leadership in the church. It's like this story begins with the disruption of persecution and ends with the disruption of a leadership reassignment. And it's like God gets to decide to do that. He can disrupt things. And so this brings us to the fourth choice, very important choice to make here, and it's this: choose to let go. The church in Antioch, they have to choose to let go of their leadership. And Barnabas and Saul, they have to choose to let go of this community of believers that I gotta believe that they had grown to love. They had spent a year there investing in them, pouring their lives into them. And now God says, hey, I need to move you out. I gotta believe this was really hard. Choose to let go. But I wanna show you a map on why this matters so much. The church starts out in Jerusalem. It spreads to Antioch, the first multi-ethnic Jesus community. And God says, I need Barnabas and I need Saul for the work of taking the church all over the world. And so Barnabas and Saul, and then later on, just Saul and some other co-workers, they begin to establish Jesus communities in all these different places. And they're multi-ethnic Jesus communities that reflect the heart of God. You see, in this whole thing, God is moving to expand the hearts of his people that they might better reflect his heart. And so you have all these Jesus communities popping up all over the place where everybody's included, regardless of race and background and history and religion before Jesus. And the world doesn't know what to do with it because there's never been anything like it. And it's incredibly powerful and magnetic. But you know what? It might not have happened if the church in Antioch hadn't chosen to let go. If they hadn't chosen to stay on mission. But because they did, God was able to do something incredible. And so I just wonder, in this season, it's so confusing and disorienting, I wonder if there's something you need to let go of in order that God might expand your heart, in order that you might experience a season of spiritual movement. I wonder if there's something you need to let go of. Let go of the way we used to do things. Let go of expectations. Let go of prejudices. Let go of our kids as they grow up. Let go of control. Let go of comfortable. Because hanging on tight can stand in the way of what God desires to do in our hearts and in our church as well. And I just believe that this season, as strange as it is, could be an incredible season of growth. This could be the best season in the history of Ada Bible Church if we make the right choices. If we choose to stay on mission and join with what God is doing and bringing all people into relationship with himself. And if we choose to invest in others, pouring our lives into them, even especially people that are different than us, and who we choose to include, to bring in, to invite, and when we choose to let go of what we need to let go of that's standing in the way of the movement that God desires to create. This could be an incredible season of God expanding our hearts to more fully represent his. Hey, thanks so much for being here this weekend. So good to open the scriptures with you. And want to invite you back next weekend. Special guest, our favorite Australian preacher is going to be with us, John Dixon. He's going to be kicking off a 2-part series that he's going to be preaching. And so hope you're able to join us next weekend.